Namaste, yogis. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga Conference 2026. Sacred community, walking the path of love together. I'm Happy Jack, the founder of Happy Jack Yoga, and our host for today. And this is our second annual gathering, bringing together over 40 monks, scholars, musicians, spiritual teachers. Today we've got an author, beautiful souls from around the world. So we opened the conference a couple of weeks ago at Harvard Divinity School. We'll have our closing gathering at Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. And together we're exploring how devotion and spiritual community can support us on this path of Bhakti Yoga. As of now, we've got well over 6,000 beautiful souls who have registered for the conference, including Harvard students, practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, yoga teachers, and sincere spiritual seekers from around the world. It's meant to be a space of friendship, of shared inquiry, and heartfelt conversation. If you'd love, please share in the chat. For those live with us, let us know where you're calling in from today. And wherever you're calling in from, thank you for being a part of our global Sangha. It's now our honor to welcome our esteemed speaker today. I'll bring her on spotlight while I'll share a few words and then welcome our guest. So please welcome to the virtual stage Pranada Comtois, who is an award-winning author, speaker, and Bhakti pilgrim, whose work translates the timeless philosophy of Bhakti into language that speaks to contemporary yoga and spiritual wellness communities. A practitioner of Bhakti Yoga for 5 decades. That's older than many of us. 5 decades practicing Bhakti Yoga. She has devoted her life to empowering women and illuminating the feminine heart of devotion. Her Bhakti trilogy, right here, we've got a copy. We've got Wise Love, Bhakti Shakti, and Prema Kirtan. They invite seekers to rediscover our universal hankering for divine love and how to attain it through mentoring, writing, and the Exploring Bhakti podcast. Pranada shares the living path of Bhakti, where inner realization naturally unfolds into daily devotion and shows how a spiritual life is expressed through wise love, meaningful service, and awakened community. We're so honored, my friends. If you're ready to welcome Pranada to the virtual stage, throw your arms in the air and loudly chant, Hari Bol! Oh, amazing. Such an honor. If you just click the unmute button there, such an honor to have you here with us, Pranada. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga Conference.
Thank you, Happy Jack. Glad to be with you. I love your energy. As I watched the discussion last year in your first conference, it was just so uplifting to be in your presence.
Well, we feel that from you. We feel that energy from you today. We got a chance to connect before the call was live today, and the feeling is mutual. You know, we met where was Sadhu Sangha last year? Florida? Orlando?
Orlando.
We met in Orlando last year, and we just had a beautiful connection. You know, Krishna brought us together in that moment. He so kindly gifted the trilogy, which we'll hear more about, and just such an important topic, such an important conversation that you're bringing, and that's so the title of our talk is Reclaiming the Real Self, the Feminine Heart of Sacred Leadership. And so, as you know, because you're a member of the Bhakti Yoga Conference community, we love to begin with the origin story. So before we go kind of exploring the themes of the book, I'd love to begin with your personal journey. What first drew you to explore Bhakti? We're talking 5 decades ago. I'm 45 years old. That's 5 decades ago. What drew you to Bhakti? Goddess theology, divine feminine, was there a moment or an experience that brought you to this path?
Yeah, well, I have to separate out, we'll have to talk about goddess theology and the feminine divine a little bit later, because I first came to Bhakti before I got into goddess theology and the feminine divine, because I was very young. I was like a child. And when I look back now, I have a granddaughter older than I was when I moved into an ashram, and I just think, what was I thinking? But anyway, I was on a very serious search from a very young age, like 8 or 9, a prayer absolutely gripped me. And this prayer was spontaneous. And the prayer was, please show me the books of the absolute truth. I don't know where I got the term. I don't know where I got the idea. It just manifested in my heart. And that became a driving force in my life, so much so that I don't even remember really going outside and playing, or I was just drawn to search, and I was not coming up with anything. But by the time I was 12, 13, I started reading and started, basically, I'm from San Francisco, born in San Francisco and raised in Marin County. And it was the hotbed of the counterculture, obviously. And I started searching. I started going to the brand new Zen temple in San Francisco on Page Street, and exploring all the philosophies that I could get my hand on. And I even went, in fact, I don't know if probably no one knows this person, but Werner Erhard, who's the founder of EST, became...
I took a training with him in Abu Dhabi, a leadership training. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, he is. Now, I was 13 when I met him. He had a little introduction at the Jack Tar Hotel in San Francisco to launch his EST program, basically. And I sat there with 250 adults, and we were all considering whether we were going to take his EST seminar, right? And I just felt that, because he was talking about this awakening he had going across the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I was interested, but after the talk I just felt like he's talking in too general terms. It wasn't resonating with me, so I kept on my search, and I really became practically suicidal that I had to find truth. I must find truth. And at 16, I had gone to a bookstore to buy Autobiography of a Yogi for my father for his birthday. And I went to buy it. It was just brand new out, all the rage, hardbound book. And I went to pick it up. I picked it off the shelf and I was looking at it. And I was like, this is it. But then something caught my eye at the bottom shelf of the bookstore. This was a bookstore in Sausalito called The Tides. And I picked up these two little tiny books, thin, paperback, like nothing compared to Autobiography of a Yogi. And I was fascinated by them. I turned them over, the cover, Beyond Birth and Death. I picked up the other one, Easy Journey to Other Planets. And I was like, what is this? Right? But it was like not what I came for. But I stood there for like 15, 20 minutes trying to decide between these two purchases for my father. I couldn't take Autobiography of a Yogi. I had to take these two little books. And he wasn't very appreciative of them. We wound up not reading them. We didn't read them. I was 13 at the time. We didn't read them. Sold everything, left the United States, had nothing in our possessions, wound up in Santo Domingo a year later, and my sister came to visit us and brought 2 boxes. I thought everything was gone. I had only owned like what's in a little suitcase by that time. And I went to these 2 boxes. This is Around the World 3 years later. And I opened the box, and the 2 books are there. They followed me around the world after having sold everything. Evidently my father kept them. So I sat down with them, and I was 16, I immediately had this extraordinary experience of my whole world shattering before me in that moment as I read, and seeing myself as a spiritual being, not who I thought I was, and understanding, and then tears started pouring from my eyes. I understood I was holding books of the absolute truth that I had been searching for since I was 8 years old. So it was a very profound movement, and it was just, it's a transformational moment that you just don't get over, right? So that's how I came to Bhakti. I moved into the ashram at 16 years old and took up the Bhakti practice seriously. And as I went on in my practice, this comes into now talking about why I got involved with goddess theology and understanding more about the feminine divine. I started to notice how my sisters in my community were marginalized and not empowered and disenfranchised and not fully engaged. So I started speaking up about this, and I became labeled as a woman's liber. But this was, going on about 10 years after becoming a Vaishnava. And I didn't really know what that meant because I was a little girl when I joined the ashram. So I started reading in mainstream books and scholarly books about the philosophy and theological ideas about feminism. And I set that aside after some study. But then many years later, when I started thinking about the gems of bhakti that were really valuable to share, I started listening to the global conversation, and I kept hearing about the divine feminine and goddess worship and this move in a more spiritual alternative community to connect with what was the feminine qualities. So I started studying goddess theology more then to try to understand how I might be able to speak to this section of the population to describe more about what bhakti has to offer regarding a conversation about the feminine divine. So that's when I decided to write something, and so that's basically kind of like the long way of coming to where I finally wanted to write these books and share bhakti. So that the direction of my study and interest came later than taking up a bhakti practice. So that's a short version of the story, a little long.
It's beautiful. It's so inspiring. I mean, just like comparing to myself, when I first found the bhakti text, like I wasn't ready. I looked at it and went back on the shelf for 10 years, and so just when I meet individuals like yourself that just take to it, and it's like what you're yearning for and hungry for at such a young age. It's so beautiful. And so, I've had a chance to engage some of your work here, and I know some of our audience has as well. And really the book begins with this powerful premise that the spiritual journey is really fundamentally about reclaiming our true identity.
Yeah.
So what does it actually mean to reclaim the real self, in a world where we're constantly being told, who we should be? What does it mean to reclaim our true self?
Yeah, so obviously to answer that, first we have to find out what the real self is, what bhakti means when we talk about the real self, right? So it's important for us to define our terms. So in self-development circles, really we speak about the authentic self, right? And this authentic self is an integration of, say, emotional and psychological coherence. And it's a self that lies beneath the social conditioning, but it's still this authentic self in the framework that I'm talking about, that I've heard, it's still tied to identity of the body and the mind. So the attempt, when we usually hear about getting to the real self, the authentic self, the attempt really is still within a misidentification with the body and mind. Now, it is one who works on getting to this type of authentic self is freeing themselves from many of the masks and false personas, and this is, I would say, vital for anyone, whether on a spiritual path or not. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that it provides a gateway to the real self. But it's not the real self. It's a partial discovery of psychological health. So we should have psychological health, but we also need to recognize that psychological health, or a state of the mind, is still tied to the mind, body, and this is a temporary self that will also die. So when we take up the enterprise, modern kind of enterprise of discovering and revealing and living from the authentic self, we really have to be careful not to forget what we're really talking about. What we really want to get to is the eternal self. So sometimes we call it the soul, right? So Bhakti explains that there's a much deeper self than the authentic self, than good psychological mental health states. And the real self, we hear, is a unit of consciousness. So, as we hear, consciousness is the big problem of science. It's the big question for philosophers of mind, but consciousness in Bhakti is spirit, and spirit or consciousness is completely distinct from the mind and body, which are the material apparatus the self has to use to self-actualize. So this is important. So for Bhakti, when we talk about reclaiming the self, we're not talking about a psychological adjustment, but an awakening of ontological truth. Now, that sounds abstract, but the understanding and experience of the self is not vague or theoretical. Each one of us can have a first-hand experience of the existence of our deep self. And when we do, all doubts about the truth of the self are erased, and we want to connect more deeply with that self. So, in summary, we each have two identities. We have the temporary sense of ourselves that is associated with our mind-body, and we have the eternal self, which is distinct. Now, we talk about the soul, the eternal self, but what is actually the soul, and how do we reclaim it? So, to understand that, we can think a little bit more deeply about what Bhakti means by the self. So, the self is eternal. It's a unit of joy and knowing. In Sanskrit, that's Satchit Ananda. That is spirit. Spirit is eternal. It is knowing and loving and joyful. And this eternal self isn't impersonal. So we are eternally individuals with emotions, desires, thoughts, and activities. In other words, just as we experience ourselves now, Bhakti says this is your experience in eternity. We are self, we are individuals, we are emotional beings, we have desires. You can't stop desires. You can redirect desires from material desires to spiritual desires, but you can't stop them. So trying to is going to make us very frustrated because it's not who we are intrinsically. So for Bhakti, just as we've been gifted a material body to try to fulfill our desires, we can be gifted a spiritual body to fulfill our spiritual desires in eternity. So that self, as we talked about, it has spiritual senses, spiritual emotions, spiritual thoughts, and joyful activities unimpeded by illusion or suffering. So when Bhakti philosophy speaks about an Atma or a soul, we're speaking about a spiritual individual with agency, pure cognition, and emotional expression. So in Bhakti metaphysics, we have, like I said, an eternal individual self. Now, what's important about us being individuals is that we are relational beings. And Bhakti says that love is the primal energy. It's the greatest need of the self. It's the nature of the Supreme Person. And it's the foundation of spirit. In fact, it's the substratum of all that is spiritual. So when we find pure love, unconditional, selfless, pristine love, we have touched spirit. And the goal of Bhakti is to exalt the self into that divine love and ecstatic spiritual relationships. So the question is, how do we reclaim it? How do we access it? And Well, that's done through remembrance, which is fanned by, first of all, it's fanned and developed by learning and then realizing the philosophical truths about the nature of the real self. So we have the false self, and then we develop the ability to distinguish between the two and then act on the level of the self. And this is not, like I said, this is not a psychological or mental adjustment. It's actually an adjustment in reality where we start seeing things as they are, and we understand the temporary self, material, these are the characteristics of it. This is the spiritual self. These are our eternal characteristics. So like I said, we can't do that just by mental adjustment. Practices are required. So that's what a sadhana or bhakti practice will help us do, is to understand that self so then we can reclaim it. So that's a summary, a brief summary for you.
Thank you so much. So much wisdom. Like, oh my goodness, you clearly have been studying and engaging this for so long. It's just, you just articulate it so well. You know, I know one of the things that you speak of in the book is you make a distinction, just an interesting distinction between divine feminine and feminine divine. And, you know, a lot of people in spiritual circles and yoga circles, we talk about the divine feminine, but you really make this distinction. Can you explain the difference and why it's important?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a subtle difference in English, because in divine feminine, you're talking about, so it's a subtle distinction in English. But when I was looking at, the sacred feminine, how people talk about the sacred feminine, how people talk about divine feminine, they're usually referring to men and women who are connecting to their creative side, their intuition, developing community, feeling, collaboration. So what I've noticed is it's a vague idea. When we talk about the sacred feminine, divine feminine, it's a vague idea that it's grounded in spirituality, right? But in those conversations that I listened in on, they don't have a clear definition of spirit or spirituality. And so it's spiritual, but we don't know what spiritual is. And so what we come to is that feminine qualities, these qualities of caring, nurturing, what many people call feminine qualities, they're seen as divine, and therefore, by extension, those who have those qualities are divine. So this muddles the waters a little bit, because just because a woman or a man may be kind doesn't make them, they're good and they're wonderful, but that doesn't make them living on a spiritual platform of the real self. They could still be completely identified with their identity as a man or woman, born here, born there, with these ideas, this set of ideas. They're completely identified with the body, and this is material. When we are identified with the mind-body, and mind means thoughts and emotions, then we're grounded in a material reality, so it's not divine. So, and the other thing I see is that the divine in this phrase also has loosely been used to refer to emotional and mental health and self-improvement, just like I was talking about before. So if we mean to say that this type of divine is spiritual, then we've made a philosophical error. The divine spoken about here is a psychological state, again. So we have to distinguish between matter and spirit, because many people think that mental or subtle, the subtle aspects of our existence are spiritual. This is not the case. There's different examples of this, what constitutes subtle for people. Some people will say connect with, let's say, whether this is true or not, let's say people are connecting with a spirit who has moved on. So this is very subtle, and they call this spiritual. This isn't spiritual, this is This is connecting with the subtle energy of existence. It's connecting with the spirit soul, but it's not the actual connection is still within the material realm. So Vedanta says spirit is consciousness and the mind is matter, and the subtle mind, although subtle, is not spirit. It's completely material. It is constrained within the material environment on its own. It cannot access spirit. But regardless, when we know what is spirit and what is matter, then we start to be able to distinguish between the two. And this clarity empowers us to factually connect with the spiritual platform. And I think, based on my conversations and hearing other conversation, is that this confusion between spirituality and psychology is the reason why many people feel dissatisfied or feel that they've hit a wall in their spiritual awakening, because they're thinking they're connecting with spirit, but they're actually still on the material platform. They haven't actually connected with that which transcends the material platform. So I say that what most people mean when they say divine feminine is incorrect, because they're trying to speak to spirit when talking about material body or mind and psyche. So I'm assuming you see the difference, right? So the phrase feminine divine, which flips the two words, we have feminine that is divine. So now we have a divine in a female form. Before we had perhaps a female form or female qualities that were loosely categorized as spiritual without understanding what spirit is. But feminine divine speaks directly to what is spiritual in female form. That form, though appearing female, is not a material form. It's a spiritual form. It is pure consciousness. Human female and male bodies are not units of consciousness. They are, matter. So if we don't contact with actual divinity, then we can't hope for divine results. And this is the piece I saw that was missing in many discussions about goddess worship and feminist theology and philosophy and the other arenas that were speaking to feminine principles. So I thought it was important to bring this into the global discussion so that we're informed. We can act more clearly. So real change, then, is what I'm saying, is not predicated on gender, but on the transformation of consciousness.
Wow, that's so powerful. I'm going to ask what seems like a silly question, and maybe it's silly, for our devotee friends, but those from the yoga community aren't as familiar. Why Sri Radha? Because maybe we read Bhagavad Gita, we hear about Krishna, we understand Shiva is like the first yogi, goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning. And many of us, myself included, until I found Bhakti, was not so familiar with Radha. But I understand from your book that she's quite central. Why is she so central to understanding divine love and spiritual identity?
Yeah, good. Thank you for the question. I get to speak about Sri Radha. Well, first of all, she's not well known for two reasons. One is that even within the Bhakti community, she is considered the most confidential aspect of Bhakti. And with great reverence, we hold the truths and relationship with Sri Radha humbly on our heads, and speak cautiously about her, because she can be misunderstood. And I've seen that, and it's actually one of the main reasons why I wrote Bhakti Shakti, is because I was reading other yogis writing about Sri Radha and how they were characterizing her, and it was incorrect and a problem, a philosophical problem and a spiritual problem. So I wanted to introduce her properly to the yoga asana community, to the broader global community, talking about goddesses and feminist spirituality. And the other reason why she's not so familiar, besides that she's so confidential within the Bhakti sphere itself, is she just came to the West 50 years ago. She's new to the West. People have not been exposed to her, and that's also why I wrote Bhakti Shakti, is so that their exposure would be based on the tradition from which she stands. So let's get to why Sri Radha is so central then to Bhakti. So as we've already spoken about, and I think a lot of your speakers already have spoken about, the core around which Bhakti circles and is grounded is love. That love is the very substance of reality. It is spirit, it's the essence of spirit. Spirit is love, and spirituality is connecting with that original pure love. So when we, as I said, when we have factually made a connection with spirit, we touch divine love. A pure love that has no comparison to any expression of love in this world. It's pristine, unconditional, selfless, ever fresh, always expanding, and never fails. So when we start becoming introduced to the nature of divine love, when we understand the details of it and the expression of it, it's quite incomprehensible, but it's beautiful to contemplate, and it's really beautiful to pursue as a practice. But anyway, so Bhakti understands that the full face of the Absolute is both the masculine and feminine divine, Sri Radha and Sri Krishna. And the love they share, which is, as I said, ever expanding, ever fresh, is the highest expression of love possible. And so in Bhakti, Krishna is the all-attractive original person who loves and revels in love. Sri Radha is the very personification of that love. So let's be clear. Sacred love has a form. Sacred love has a form, and that person is Sri Radha. So while other goddesses that we hear about, whether in the yoga universe or other cultures, they embody compassion, wisdom, or love for the divine or for the creation. Sri Radha is divine love itself. Okay, you see the difference? It's difficult to wrap our heads around this. It takes some understanding, but there is a person who is the person of the most exalted love. And since love is the very root of all existence, and Sri Radha is love, Bhakti elevates the feminine divine, Sri Radha, in transcendence, higher than any other goddess tradition. This is something I really wanted to share with the broader community, just this extraordinary position of Srimati Radharani. She is the very Shakti, or the very energy of existence, through which we can experience sacred love and a relationship with our divine friend, Sri Krishna. So, Sri Radha is Bhakti itself. When we talk about Bhakti as a spiritual energy, as a love, we're referring to the person Sri Radha, and in her contact through service, we are able to experience the nature and extent of her love. So, to further talk about this, without her, the Supreme Person would remain self-contained perfection, and when you're self-contained, you're still in the self, right? You have no need to move or act or do anything. You're fully self-satisfied. However, Krishna is moved to dance in ecstasy by the power of Radha's love. He comes out from that self-satisfaction to experience Radha's love. That love is so competent. It's such a full expression that it completely conquers he who is unconquerable.
Wow.
Some say Radha throws him off his throne. So, and when we think about this, we think of approaching our source, the infinite, the absolute, how possibly could we make that approach? It's inconceivable in some ways. Radha shows us it's through love. He is conquered by love. And Radha, Goddess Radha, reveals what it means to love, to really love, and to be completely loved. So she shows how love is the highest truth, the greatest need of the self, and that love is our eternal language. So to understand Radha is to understand ourselves. And though we're finite vessels and she's an infinite vessel, we still, like her, have infinite longing for divine love and a desire to connect with our divine beloved. So it's by her grace we are allowed entry into this divine love affair to participate in its dance. So, for Bhakti, it's the feminine divine, Sri Radha, who stands at the apex of reality as the supreme person. So, many of these concepts are completely novel in the philosophical, theological world, and these are the kinds of gems of Bhakti, which are so substantial, so beautiful, that I wanted to share. And Bhakti shows us, therefore, that understanding ourselves is ourselves as loving selves who need to uncover and access that which is beyond male or female, and to properly introduce Radha. These are the dimensions I felt really could benefit the global community about feminine spirituality. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just feel it, feel the divine connection in your sharing, and kind of bringing it a little bit to the practical application. So your talk, the title is Reclaiming the Real Self, the Feminine Heart of Sacred Leadership. And so how does reclaiming our true spiritual identity, how can that transform the way that we lead communities or our families or spiritual movements? How is that important? How will that affect?
Yeah. So when our vision is covered by thinking that we're this body and mind, we have our capacities and our perspectives are very limited. We can't see the whole picture. So what we think are solutions mostly just create more problems, and then we come up with more solutions that create further problems, and so we remain in this cycle. So, and it doesn't matter how sincere we are. If we're living from the temporary self, we're not seeing all of reality, and therefore we cannot interact with the environment in a way that's real and sustainable and really nourishing. So, so therefore, knowing, first of all, learning about the self, then living on the platform of the self means developing the eyes to see the difference between matter and spirit. Once we start understanding this, we start seeing solutions that are real. So, like for instance, a primary illusion about leading is to control. If we control people, if we control things, if we control the environment, then we're going to accomplish and get something done and be successful. So, just on a side note, we actually can't control. We're not controllers. We're dependent. We can't even control whether I'm going to digest my next meal. I can't control, for instance, that I don't have internet and I'm working on a hotspot on a phone instead of the internet.
We can't control our bladders. If we got to run to the bathroom, it's so true.
Exactly. We can't even control food production as much as we like. If rain is withheld, we will go hungry. So on and on, we're just not in control. And but in this concept of leadership and community, when we exert our control, it means we're using people for our own benefit and our gratification. This is not a relational way of being. It may accomplish something externally, it looks like it is, although it's destroying the very nature of ourselves and it makes us completely unhappy, it miscalculates the importance of the well-being of the people we're managing. And even more progressive managers often fail in taking care of people due to economic pressures. So this is another ignorance that binds us. The environment and the people from the time we're young tell us that money and things and power and fame, this is what's going to bring you happiness. This is where you'll find joy. This is where you need to invest your energy. However, this, we learn, hopefully, is a terrible lie that derails our lives and leaves us wondering why we're not happy or always happy. What makes the self, the soul, who is a relational individual, a unit of joy, a unit of love, happy, are relationships. We can be extraordinarily famous or wealthy, but without loving relationships, we cannot be happy. So, when we act from the platform of the real self, which takes practice, and like I said, isn't just a psychological or mental adjustment, but one that's grounded in a practice and understanding, that real self never forgets that people and relationships are the most important part of our lives. And when we live in the integrity of the goodness of this understanding, along with cultivating a relationship with our source, the sweet absolute, we'll feel whole and joyful and be able to come from an awareness of interconnection instead of competition. So, as a leader with this vision, we don't claim authority through demand or control, but through presence, through good character, goodwill. We'll see everything as sacred and every relationship as an opportunity to serve. Now, also, let's talk about this, because to lead doesn't mean leading some huge group or a large community. Leading means leading ourselves first and foremost. And secondly, then through that endeavor, through that cultivation, we're able to, how would you say, influence the circle of people around us. This is just as important as some big leader. In fact, it's more important because it's through a real presence, through cultivation of real qualities and trying to develop this unconditional love for others, for ourselves, for the environment, for the Supreme. This is what really moves people and can extend out into broader communities. And most people are going to respond to love than beating them up with the current worth ethics of burnout. That it just these ethics now are, I just see people burned out and afraid, uncertain and anxious, and this is not how you actually get powerful work. Anyway, these are some thoughts.
Yeah, such good thoughts. It feels so deep, like you've thought about this so deeply for so many years, and it comes through in your writing, connecting it to community. So our conference theme, right, is sacred community, walking this path of love together. And so you write about divine community, how it's an outward expression of really our inner realization. And can you just simply explain, why is community so essential on the path of Bhakti Yoga?
Because Bhakti is a relational philosophy. So to develop divine love, we have the prospect of that is right in front of us, right here, right now. How is that? How do we develop divine love? Divine love ultimately is for the sweet absolute, the divine beloved, but we don't see that person right now. I see you, Happy Jack, in front of me. And I see people in front of me on a daily basis. How can I develop divine love in my current situation as an expression of spiritual realization? It has to be that I'm practicing love here, unconditional love here and now. And how can I do that unless I have community? It's not even possible. And besides that, Bhakti talks about community being necessary for one's spiritual development and awakening. It is essential for the very core ideal of Bhakti to develop love. The soul is meant for love and service. That's who we are intrinsically. And when we commit ourselves to healthy relationships with others, ourselves first, others and the divine, then our intentional attention to relationships becomes natural and an absolute necessity. So, I would just say that when we can be in community with others, together, jointly trying to develop divine love through expressions of in our own relationships, that's where we're going to make a lot of progress in bhakti. And that's done, interestingly, or not interestingly, just it's done by seeing each person we come in contact with as a spark of spirit, as a unit of the Supreme, just as we are. And it shifts our vision away from seeing the form in front of us to seeing the real person in front of us. And when this vision shifts, then we start relating to other people, not as what their form looks like or who they think they are, but as their true spiritual self. And this elevates relationships to the spiritual platform. This is how you elevate, and it's through community that we elevate. I'm just remembering, I can't remember the exact quote, but a friend says that it's relationships within this world that our divine love project is tested and fructifies.
I love that. It's so good. I want to, I'm just thinking about our listener, our viewer who, again, newer to the path. So say if there's someone who feels inspired by what you're sharing right now, as I do, but they don't know where to begin. And I mean, maybe the place to begin is with Bhakti Shakti, Wise Love, or Prema Kirtan. But are there some simple practices that can help us cultivate this connection with the feminine divine in our daily life?
Yeah, so it has to do with understanding that, so we're talking about the feminine divine, Sri Radha. So we need to understand we're talking about a person. We're not talking about a metaphor. We're not talking about a myth. We're not talking about a principle. We're talking about a real person. And this can seem strange for us because a lot of times the personalities in the yoga universe are described like that, metaphor, not as people. They're people, but they're not seen like that. They're kind of like, what can I understand from this person or this personification to bring into my life? But what we're talking about here is a person. And none of the texts, we should say this, within the tradition, none of the texts anywhere say that these personalities that we hear about are archetypes or metaphors or just ideas. They are people. And so how do we develop a relationship with anybody becomes the question. So we develop a relationship with Sri Radha like we would with any person. How do we develop relationships? We speak about the person, we talk about the person, we remember the person. If there's something to read about the person, we'll read about them, and we'll like to hang out with people who know that person. We'll try to speak with that person so we can remember Radha. Say, for instance, we can, as we wake in the morning, we can offer simple prayers of appreciation for this beautiful personality that's come into our life. Perhaps we can ask her to help us remember her through the day and learn how to embody her love in the world, where we actually become an instrument of her love in the world. Sri Radha delights in beauty. We could offer beautiful things in our environment to Radha, say a picture of Radha in a sacred place, Radha and Krishna. And we can do daily offerings. I know a lot of yogis will offer incense and flowers, essential oils, beautiful things to not only enhance our environment, but to make offerings to Radha and Krishna. And we were just talking about community and how bhakti is relational, so we can offer small acts of kindness to others so that we can train our vision and heart to see others as part of the divine beloved, so that we make a shift from me to we. That alone would greatly enhance our relationships and our connection. Even that's what Sri Radha wants to see from us. So finally, most importantly, she's accessible through the powerful sound vibration of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. She's in the Mahamantra as Hare. So when we are chanting the Mahamantra, we are directly in touch with her. Bhakti has a very developed philosophical understanding about the primacy and power of sacred sound. And the Mahamantra is the sonic form of the sweet absolute. It is the way that the divine comes to us in this world. We're thinking we should see them, but actually we start seeing through hearing, and we become familiar through hearing, and that familiarity will bring about the vision, will call them to us, where they will make themselves seen they'll give us transcendental eyes to see. So it's sacred sound is a relational bridge that crosses the distance between us and Sri Radha and Krishna, Bhagavan Krishna. So, I would highly recommend trying a Mahamantra practice and seeing what kinds of experiences that you have. Oftentimes people have profound experiences that confirm, yes, this is an interesting way for you to consider.
I love it. Just hearing you share it makes me realize I've got so much to learn and so far to go. But it's so inspiring being in your association, truly. And we'll open it up for audience Q&A here in just a moment if you want to raise your virtual hand. But maybe just one more for you. I love it. We got hands coming up already. Just quick, what would change in our world? We've some of our recent speakers have talked, it's very uncertain times. What would change in our world if people truly lived from their spiritual identity rather than their social identity?
Well, first of all, every interaction, this is not something that you get to right away, right? To really understand your spiritual self and to act as the spiritual self. This is a cultivation. This is a serious cultivation. We're talking about a high attainment for a human being. So it takes practice. So it's not going to be that tomorrow everyone's going to just be able to live from the self. But should we do that as an individual, every interaction would carry an unspoken reverence. Here is another soul, another spark of our divine source. And this will completely dismantle the need to dominate, defend, or disguise, or be fearful. The need to betray. This whole construct of competition cannot coexist with a remembrance that all life radiates from one center of love and our divine friend.
So amazing. I love it. Well, I've got so many more questions, but I want to bring some beautiful souls on here. Let's bring Rasangi on. Rasangi, please welcome. So
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Where are you from?
Pranada for president.
Yes.
Pranada for president. I'm from Santa Cruz.
No, thank you.
I know you wouldn't want to, but anyway. Anyway, I'm from Santa Cruz, California. I'm an old friend of Pranada's, been around as long as she has. I can't believe we're still here. That's
We met
mercy.
each other in Los Angeles in 1975.
Yeah, I joined in 73, but anyway, it's amazing we're still here. And what I wanted to say is what so inspired me today was that Pranada's right. This is like the secret of all secrets. This is not common just breathing and this and that. This is like intimate, high stuff. Okay? But what Pranada is bringing to us shows me that Radha herself wants to be known, that Radha is allowing us to know her and to love her. Now,
Well,
that
she wants
blows
to
me
help.
away.
She wants, by her presence, she wants to help us. She wants to help the world, yes.
Oh my gosh. Because I've been around a long time and Radha was kind of taboo. Don't think about that. That's too high. And now we're being gifted this amazing flow of divine energy, and Pranada has done homework. She has done so much research, and I trust that. And I was so eager to hear and get in that flow. I want to be in that flow. So thank you so much. And although I'm a therapist, I'm in psychology. And although psychology is not the goal, it can help. We need to be healthy.
Absolutely.
To be able to be
You cannot reach the true self without working with the false self. You just need a healthy false self.
Yeah, we need to become healthy. So psychology is useful. Make use of whatever we can to be as healthy as we can so that we can have something wonderful to offer to her to serve, even here, right now. That's it. Thank you so much.
So beautiful, Rasangi. You are definitely in the flow. We're nominating you for vice president. I think the two of you, we need the two of you. Well, let's send so much love, gratitude out to Santa Cruz, California. Rasangi, 1973, connected with the devotees. Wow. So inspiring. I'm sure we got so many beautiful souls here that have come, but just in the essence, respect of time, what would you leave us with, Pranada, as we kind of step here forward into the rest of our journey? What would you wish for us? What would you hope for us? What would you offer us as we continue?
I wish you will realize yourselves. And through that realization, come in touch with the most powerful potency of the world, which is divine love, and embrace that love through an embrace with the beautiful divine couple, Sri Radha and Sri Krishna.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Mic drop. That was so, just so deep. And as Rasangi shared, you've definitely researched this and contemplated it and done introspection, and it just comes through with such grace. So
it's not really so much research; it's living it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really living it, because when you live it, this is an important point. Just to end here. Knowledge of bhakti isn't something that you just gather with the intellect. You read a lot, you study a lot. It is grace descending, because the mind is, like I said, is limited. It can only reach the borders of the universe. The mind cannot go beyond that. So to actually access spirit, which is present in the world, but also beyond the material universe, that requires revelation. It requires descent of knowledge. And so bhakti is a living wisdom path. It is a path that we will have first experience of the self by taking up these methodologies. It's a time-tested path through millennia, and we have people living today who can also tell us that the path works, the experience is real, and it's available to each one of us.
Well, we feel it. We feel it through your presence. Just such congruency and conviction, and gives me Shraddha, gives me some faith. I see we got Shraddhanjali here. It gives us Shraddha. But thank you so much for your time, Pranada. It's such
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Happy to be with Happy Jack.
Happy to have you here with us, and just so our gratitude to you, to all the beautiful souls who are here live with us, for those watching the replay. Just truly an honor to be on this journey together. So wishing you an amazing rest of the day. Please.
Yeah, Jack. One other thing is that besides the books, I have an Exploring Bhakti podcast on my YouTube channel at Pranada Comtois. There's over 20 podcasts, and it systematically breaks down Bhakti, theology, philosophy, and the path. If anyone wants to learn more, that they might want to look there too.
That's phenomenal. We're going to share links to the podcast, to the books, to the website, everything that Pranada has to offer. She's down in the Florida area. I know some of our yoga friends are here in Florida. But just so much gratitude, and let's continue to walk this path of love together. Wishing you an amazing rest of the day, my friends, and we will see you soon. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Bol.